talk today about how do you become a leader on your team. So this is more addressed to players, but of course, if you're a parent listening to this, go ahead and make sure that your player is watching or listening to this episode. So working with players, what I see are players not necessarily taking the right steps to be a leader on their team. Sometimes they either fall into the background, sometimes they're just the ones who are kind of drifting in, sometimes they're just joking around and they're not making the most of their opportunity. So what I like to do is I would really want to be able to share those leadership qualities that I prize and I know that other coaches prize. And it's really a mentality thing. And it's really what comes down to being a really good leader. And of course, there's multiple things that encompass leadership. But I think for what I see are three things that inspire people to go out and do what they need to do. So, number one, if you want your player to be able to be a leader, and if you're a player and you want to be a leader, number one, don't think that you have all the answers, right? People think that if you're a leader, that means you're the best player. That means everybody sees how good you are at what you do, and they think that, hey, you are now the leader of this team. And that's not necessarily the case. I think of a book out there by Sam Walker called The Captain's Class. And what he did was really be able to look at all these teams that were dynasties, some of the best teams in the world. And what he saw was that they had these captains on their team. And the reason that they were able to see so much consistent success was because that they had these leaders of these captains that weren't necessarily the best players, but they were the one who were able to inspire. Again, it's a really great book. Go ahead, make sure you check it out. I'm going to link in the description below. Make sure you check out that book because it's a wonderful read. But it kind of leads into that point. Don't feel like you have to be the one who is the best player to necessary to inspire and to lead everybody. You can be the one who's asking questions. You can be the one who's holding people accountable. You can be the one who's always trying to learn, right? Just because you're always trying to learn, just because you're asking questions, it helps to foster more understanding when it comes to everybody who is playing the game. So number one, make sure that you don't think that you have all the answers. Don't think that you have to be the best player out there to be the one who's a leader. And if you do think you're the best person out there, well, that's when your organization, that's when your team, that's when everybody starts to suffer. So what I would say is number one, ask the right questions. Be the person who's going out there and who's not afraid to ask questions, to be able to foster unity, to be able to inspire other people. Number two, don't mistake being emotional or temperamental as necessarily a good thing, right? And I have been on teams in the past where the coach, what they would try to do at halftime to get us to play better is to yell, is to scream, is to get us, to challenge us to play better. And sometimes it worked, but other times it didn't, right? Because if you rely on emotionality to be able to get someone to do something, then you're not going to necessarily be consistent. Some days you'll be there, sometimes you won't. If your temperament is so volatile that you cannot, when your temperament is so volatile, then it's hard for people to be consistent. And so that's what I would say. If you want to be a leader, if you want to be someone on a team, you don't have to be this one who is a screamer, who's yelling all the time, who's always trying to get people's attention by yelling at them and trying to be emotional, right? Some people are just going to be hit or miss and not necessarily fall in line behind you. But if you're a person who brings intensity, if you're someone who is consistent with their production, who's focused, who brings energy and effort every single time they step on the field, right? That's something totally different. And again, that's what if your player wants to be a leader, that's what they need to focus on. And then finally, if you want your player to be a leader out on the field, help them to understand that they have to demonstrate being a good follower. And I know that goes back to number one, but it's a little bit of a different point. So you understand if you are someone who says, everybody follow me, bring everybody together, and you're a player that everybody is drawn to, then you can't go out and not demonstrate the values that you say. If you say it's important for us to follow in line and to do this, but only when you feel like it, well, how are you going to be able to hold anybody accountable? If you're someone who is at one point bringing someone together and the next point tearing them down, then the team is going to be up and down. I comforted several players on my playing career who were like this. They were somebody that people would be drawn to, people would want to come and talk to and want to follow. But then on the next day, they didn't feel like training or they didn't feel like really trying that hard. So then people were being pushed away. Or I had other players who, they were constantly yelling and telling people what they needed to do, but they wouldn't be the ones who are actually doing it. So if you want to be a leader, demonstrate that. It's better to be a demonstration goes way farther than a description. Again, still that for John Wooden, but it's one of these things that you have to be able to demonstrate. I need to be a good follower here. I need to be a good leader. If these are the values that I purport to have, then this is something that I need to do for myself. So I'm going to respect the coach. Again, I have had opportunities to play on several teams, and sometimes I don't necessarily like what coaches decide. But guess what? I'm going to be someone who falls in line because, again, it's a level of respect. And if I want somebody to follow me, how can I go ahead and say, I don't want to submit to anybody else? Sometimes you're going to have to submit to somebody, even if you don't understand, even if you don't like the decision that they make, you still are respectful and you still follow them because, again, you are trying to demonstrate what it's like to be a good leader by following. So again, those are the three things. So number one, make sure that you don't feel like you have to be the best to be a leader, right? Don't act like you have to have all the answers to be a good leader. And then vice versa, the flip side of that is don't pretend that you have all the answers when you're the leader, right? Don't be afraid to ask questions, to constantly learning and to constantly trying to grow from different people. There are so many people that have more wisdom and more knowledge than you have. Use them, help them to buy into what you're doing by inspiring them, by asking questions and involving them in decisions. My second point would be don't equate emotionality, don't equate being volatile, temperament, don't equate that with being intense. That's not necessarily being intense. You can yell, you can scream, you can be emotional, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to equate to making sure people are going to have consistent production. So what I would say to you, if you want to be a leader, if you want to be a teammate, you don't need to be the one who's always yelling, pointing fingers, and always getting people riled up. What you want to be able to do is have a standard that people fall under and people get to every single time and have the intensity. And the best way you can do that leads into point number three, which is simply making sure that you're demonstrating how to be a good follower if you want to be a good leader, right? Show people I may not agree with the coach, but I'm going to be respectful. I'm going to be the one who makes sure I take care of business because I want somebody to be able to follow me. So I'm going to make sure I'm being a good follower. And I'm going to be somebody who demonstrates what I want to see from people who end up following after me. And guess what? Some of the craziest thing for me was people were drawn to me just by me taking care of business. I've had in the past, people come up to me and say, hey, that's why I like having you on this team because, you demonstrate the right way to go about things. It's just because I want to make sure that the person in charge has my respect and I'm going to show them respect by what it is that I do. And so that's what I would say. If your player is looking for three kind of different ways to be a leader, let me know what you guys think of these three steps. Have you guys heard about these things? Have you talked about these things? Have you been able to do these things? And if you haven't, go ahead and try to do it in your next time you're on a team or next time that you're at practice. Try to start implementing some of these things, right? Whatever it is that you're struggling with, go ahead and start implementing it into your next training session. So looking forward to talking to you guys soon, and I'll see you later.